Do you see any danger right now with IRAs and 401ks down the road?
We've written a couple of pieces that are up on my blog on 401ks and IRAs and annuitization. What happened, Jay, before the election was we had a series of hearings, and finally at the Department of, both in Congress and the Department of Labor, discussing and comparing different options to engineer 401ks and IRAs in ways that would really restrict and I think potentially devalue the asset that you have in them. And if you go to my blog, it's larry.com/blog, and do a search for IRAs and 401ks, we also did one that described the proposals called annuitization, where instead of when you're ready to take the money out, you don't get your money as an asset, you get an annuity that's part of a cash flow. And the idea is converting some of these into basically not your asset, but simply a right to have lifelong income, which is essentially forcing it into fixed income. Now, what happened was I was very concerned that this happened right before the election, because generally that's when people are more careful. So if they were considering it before the election, this was, to me, a sign that this was being taken seriously. Now, once the president negotiated the tax deal with the Republicans, they kind of put on the table a framework to redo Social Security, and my guess is if they're going to do something with IRAs and 401ks, that's the perfect time to do it. And it's easily rolled into something that's such a bigger political issue that they could do a lot. I think there's no doubt if you go to the U.S. Debt Clock at usdebtclock.org, what you'll see is the amount of contingent liabilities that the government is responsible to finance is enormous for Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And if you look at the numbers, the question is, where are you going to get that money? Well, you can force the Chinese to buy treasuries, or you can cut the military. The problem is if you cut the military, then you can't force the Chinese to buy more treasury securities.
That makes sense.
You can cut the interest on the debt, but then you can't get, again, the Chinese to buy more treasury securities. Yeah. So where do you finance it? Well, it's pretty easy. If you look at how much money we have in retirement savings, IRAs and 401ks and pension funds, I can see why the Chinese would say, hey, if you want to spend all that money on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, why don't you make the people who are getting the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid payments finance it for their money? So it doesn't take long when you look at the numbers sort of from a top down to say, ultimately, somebody has to force that money to finance these payments. And so I think that the financial pressures to tap in and sort of force 401ks and IRAs and pension funds to finance the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid bulge, that's coming. And my concern is when we deal with the Social Security issues, probably after the next election, maybe before, we'll see. I think it could be fluid. And my fear is not that they'll force investment into treasuries or something like that, but literally they'll try and convert to one of these annuity kind of proposals where it's not your asset, it's simply your right to a lifelong income in an annuity in that amount. So it goes from being your asset to basically a right to lifelong income, which means your heirs could be wiped out.
If that is the case, and we are under that kind of danger of something like that happening, is it better off for the average investor right now to just get out while the getting's good and, liquidate these 401ks, take the tax hit, and move on?
Here's the thing. If you look at each person's situation is unique. So there's enough differentiation in sort of how much people have in and why it's there and their age and their tax rate and all sorts of other things. So it's not a simple question. And ultimately the question, Jay, rests on a political read of what do you think the government's going to do and when's it going to do it. And that's kind of a gestalt. It's something everybody has to figure out for themselves. do you want to live with that risk? So, for example, and I have an article up on the blog that explains why I don't have an IRA or 401k. I don't, and I never will, because I don't want to worry about it. I had $500,000 in a 401k, and the IRS slapped it under audit, and the next thing you know, I got a subpoena. And I know why they did it. They did it so I couldn't finance the expenses. They were trying to corner me, so I busted the thing. I paid $225,000 in taxes, and went ahead and and had the chutzpah to finance the expenses, and went on to fight and win. Mm-hmm. When I settled the litigation and we finally got the government to cough up what they owed my company, my accountant said, "Oh, let's fund up that 401k," and I said, "No, never again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Never again. I know I don't. That's not my money as soon as I put it in one of those boxes, so I'd rather pay my taxes and take it and know it's mine." Now, that's a Gestalt question that, I could sit down with an Excel spreadsheet and prove to you that that's what some people would say is not a rational decision. But I don't want money tied up in those boxes, because I have had enough experience with the U.S. government to know that I'm required to keep my contracts and they're not required to keep theirs. So I don't want to do business with them unless I absolutely have to.